Agoric is about to onboard more developers to Web3 by allowing them to build smart contracts in JavaScript. The internet has grown exponentially over the past 10 years, so the developer communities around the globe, especially JavaScript, is widely adopted. In fact, JavaScript is one of the oldest and most adopted programming languages in the world, and the numbers don't lie. In total, more than 10 million developers can code in JavaScript. However, this is not the case with Solidity. Solidity is a very young language that developers need to know in order to program smart contracts. Smart contracts are the fundament of every DeFi application on, for example, Ethereum. Today, only 200,000 developers can code in Solidity. The supply of DeFi applications has grown exponentially as well since early 2020, but considering that roughly 8.5 billion people will live on Earth by 2030 and that 1.7 billion people do not have access to a bank account, the demand for decentralized financial services will most likely grow. So, how can we meet the growing demand in time without relying on Solidity programmers only? This is where Agoric comes into play. The project introduced a very exciting solution. Agoric allows developers to deploy smart contracts also in JavaScript. So, developers do not have to spend time learning a new programming language. No, they can start building right away. And now Fabian and I have the pleasure to welcome Dean Tribble from Agoric to the show. We will also talk about the BLD token, the general concept of the project and much more, so make sure to watch this entire video to the very end. Dean, what a pleasure to have you on. And it's also so nice to see you again after Cosmoverse. How are you doing these days?
I'm doing great, and thank you for having me back. This is awesome. And yeah, Cosmoverse, definitely. Oh my God, that was awesome.
Yeah, so excited about this interview. And yeah, Cosmoverse was a couple of months ago. Great to talk to you again. And today we talk all things Agoric. Because 2022, I heard 2022 is going to be a big year for the Cosmos ecosystem because Agoric is going to launch.
That's right.
So
absolutely.
Let's start, man. So excited about Agoric and what it means for the Cosmos ecosystem. So let's start this interview and talk about JavaScript smart contracts. So obviously, smart contracts on Agoric are written in JavaScript. Could you tell our audience what your thoughts behind all of this was to enable JavaScript smart contracts on Agoric?
Sure, yeah. I've been working in smart contracts. I worked on the first production one back in 1989, so pre-blockchain, right? And this is really about software that's enforcing the terms of a contract-like arrangement between third parties. eBay, PayPal, Venmo, Airbnb, Uber, Lyft, all of those are that kind of thing, only they require a trusted intermediary. And with a blockchain, with the high integrity of the replicated execution in different jurisdictions and all that, you can start to deploy smart contracts that don't have that intermediary in the middle that is in control of it and can backdoor things and can be taken over and all these various things that we would like to solve. And so that's always been the vision of what we're building. The key, though, is who gets to write those, right? If you just trade writing contracts and organizations for having to go and, pray to a temple that has only a few thousand developers that can build smart contracts, you've still got a pretty limited solution space there. And so a big part of the reason for Agoric was, well, two big reasons. One is there are enormous security hazards in existing systems like Ethereum and stuff that inherits from them that most developers, even security experts, cannot get right. It's just not well suited for what programmers and humans can succeed at. And And so having a different approach is important. And then having it in a language that already millions of developers understand mean that now there's 10 million plus developers that could at least understand what's being built in these smart contracts, and a big chunk of them could then write them. And that really opens up this solution space of building software that enables more cooperation. Really opens it up to a much, much bigger audience. The goal is, if you can build an application on the web, if you can build a Web 2 application, you ought to be able to build a Web 3 application, and you ought to be able to do it, using the most popular language, using the most popular tools, using the techniques you currently use, the tools you currently use, and the team you've currently got. And so that meant solve the problem in JavaScript. However hard that is, that's the problem you have to solve.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I mean, this unleashes like the true potential of Web3, because nowadays it's very hard to find Solidity developers or Rust developers. It's like very, very hard to find these people. And one man who would agree with you is Naval. He invested in Agoric, and I think a lot of people are super interested in that. So could you talk a little bit about your conversations with Naval and why is he so excited about Agoric?
So I had this wonderful conversation with him. So Agoric kind of started out of a panel that the Foresight Institute arranged, that had in this panel in 2017, Zuko of Zcash, Arthur Brightman of Tezos, Brian Warner, who had just done the security review, been on the security review team for Ethereum at Least Authority, Mark Miller, our chief scientist, and Jorge from Gravity, who was one of the enthusiastic people that really kind of observed that us, me, Markham, a few others had security stuff that could solve the problems people were encountering. And so this panel happened, and it happened during the Tezos launch, the Tezos sale. So, while Arthur is up there talking about, what can the Agoric approach, the object capability approach to security do for smart contracts, their value was going up by, millions of dollars a minute or whatever it was, right? So that sort of was the nucleus of that panel. Said, yeah, this stuff that you guys have been working on for decades, it actually could solve these problems. We should really do something here. Zuko brought in Naval, and he got it, and he got it immediately. And so like a year later, we're talking through business plan and figuring out strategy for our second fundraiser or whatever. And he asked a question like, so remind me what your elevator pitch is. And I start talking, and he goes, no. It's like, your elevator pitch is programmability. And that was it. It was just, he just like summarized our entire thing in programmability. And that's really it, is how do we make it so this stuff is programmable to just a lot more people? And that's sort of the heart of the smart contract platform is, and it's not just build it in JavaScript, build it with tools, but it's build it with the best practices, component library kinds of things that people are used to with React and Vue and Angular and so forth, and give that power of exponential composition, where developers can grab components built by other developers and plug them together in a way that produces more and more interesting and sophisticated applications rapidly and safely. And that's a big part of the whole architecture of the system, is to enable that kind of really truly DeFi Legos, financial Legos, NFT Legos, governance Legos, whatever it is, but pluggability of these things so you can rapidly put new interesting stuff together.
Programmability, that's a very, very cool summary. I like it. And now let's talk about a topic that personally excites me very much about Agoric. It's the fact that it basically onboards the whole Web 2 developer scene into crypto. So that's so cool. I don't think any other blockchain has achieved this so far. So, and that's also the goal of Web 3, it's like,
that's right.
Our goal of Web 3 it's a discussion that has lasted for weeks and months now. How do we get Web 2 people into Web 3? That's what right. Crypto Trader was talking about, for 6 months now, and right. Agoric could be the solution to this.
Exactly.
Yeah, could you talk about a little bit about onboarding Web 2 to Web 3?
Sure. And we've got several stages for the Agoric rollout, and so that's sort of our second stage, as it were. We are sponsoring a conference, of which the first of them is later this month, called Blue Lava, that is really about introducing blockchain and Web3 concepts to Web2 developers that are not in it yet. And a big part of the reason we're sponsoring that is this conference is about focusing on JavaScript developers, on Web2 developers, to just say, hey, there's a lot of opportunity here. You've got the skills that now are actually needed, right? It's not that you have to go learn a, strange, new, bizarre programming language or get new tools or what have you. I mean, there's all these front ends out there that, worst case, you can go and make them just a heck of a lot better than they are now, because they were not built by people steeped in UX. Or you can design the next generation of NFT if you just wrap your head around the problem and think about your audience that you already know how to build for. And so that's a big part of it, is getting the tools out there so that the Web2 developers really can be the hero to the next generation of applications and DeFi and NFTs and so forth.
Yeah, I really love the philosophy behind this idea. And I mean, also in general, you could say that Cosmos is so designed to bring every project in and to onboard as many developers as possible. So with that being said, let's talk about Cosmos. I know you guys played an elementary role for building the Cosmos IBC, but let's ignore this fact for a second and just solidly talk about why you are in Cosmos. Why do you love Cosmos so much?
Sure. So, we worked with multiple different technology folks and stacks, and from our perspective, the goal is getting out to the mainstream world, and customer base and so forth. And so to us, it's not about carving up the current piece. So we were working with, Vitalik and Ethereum, with the Polkadot folk and with the Cosmos folk. But the thing about the Cosmos folk, when we first encountered them, is it was like, here's our peeps. They have the same vision of decentralized cooperation that is opt-in, right? It is a bunch of independent projects that, because it's good for both of them, they connect and get more value as a result, right? And an interchain of loosely coupled independent projects is just a much more plausible model of how this technology moves out and spreads into all parts of the programming ecosystem than the model that people had of winner take all. When we were first starting this, there were a lot of chains that all were designed and envisioned as if they were going to be the only token. Right. And one of the, in some sense, the best thing about Solana and all the ETH L2s is there was sort of a transition in 2021, really, from, there's ETH and there's a bunch of crap that's going on that, maybe there'll be some good ideas there, to, oh, the world is multi-chain. Just we're done, right? There's no one guy, there's no one winner. It's all going to be a bunch of chains that have different trade-offs and different value on them and different assets, all able to interoperate in some way or not. And the ones that don't interoperate well will be left behind.
I couldn't agree more with you. And yes, breaking news for some people into space. The future is multi-chain. But yeah, I mean, it is how it is. And one elementary part of it and why Cosmos is so cool, I said, let's ignore this fact for a second, but now let's focus on this fact. You were elementary for making IBC happening. And we talk a lot about IBC on this show. It's like basically one of the most crucial aspects of Cosmos. And so let's start how you began to build on IBC, and then let's have a look into the future. What are you expecting for IBC in 2022?
So, I think you were asking that. Were you asking about the origin or how we're using it?
No, the origin. So how did it start, and now where are we heading?
Right. So Jay and Ethan and Zucky were, back before we knew them. So, and I only found this out after we were already working with them for months, that they were chewing on the problems of how do we do this multi-chain kind of thing where people can grow their own platforms and connect them all together. And Zucky ran into the E-Lang, the E-programming language work that Mark Miller spearheaded and that derived out of work that Mark and I did at Xerox PARC dark and back in the misty ancient past of the internet. And he read that and got it. I mean, he completely internalized that this whole notion, and this is where, smart contracts, the ideas, a lot of them developed of these smart contracts written in the E-programming language then, and then we migrated that to JavaScript, were able to work together, again, pre-blockchain, using distributed object programming protocols and distributed messaging between independent services that all had different trust boundaries, that were all representing different interests. And he saw this and realized that that's exactly the vision that lined up with their vision of how these independent chains would work together. And so from my perspective, IBC is, and I think from their perspective, right, IBC grew out of that set of ideas where they then brought best practices, Zucky and Ethan and Jay brought best practices for doing chain interoperability together with that vision of how do you do distributed decentralized commerce. And that was the inception of IBC, that really brought those two threads of thought together in a way that made sense. So come 2018, when we finally connected with the Cosmos folks for real, we walked through, and we had already built a version of our distributed object protocol, which we've done in lots of other commercial endeavors, from the Midori operating system at Microsoft to secure enterprise software at Sun and various others, right? And so we were building that for our chain to talk to our clients, and we walked through all the requirements, we walked through the technology, we walked through the same set for IBC that they had so far, and they just meshed. And they meshed in ways where, the parts that overlapped were completely in sync. The parts that didn't, we both needed. What they had, we needed. What we had, they needed. And it just made a lot of sense to work together. So ICF funded AIB, Informal, and Agoric to go and build IBC. And we had weekly design meetings. We still have biweekly design meetings to deal with improvements and improvements in security of it, enhancements to features, and so forth. But we met on a regular basis. Chris drove the spec process that captured all the ideas. It got reviewed by the community, by several different teams, and came together into the implementation that shipped in 2021. And, that was one of those sort of quiet, enormous paradigm shifts that now suddenly, chains can launch not in isolation, right? Prior to April last year, every chain launched as an independent thing. And if it didn't make sense to be completely independent with your own full silo, then you kind of couldn't launch. And now with IBC, suddenly you could bring something new to the table and not have to solve every other problem and contribute it to this large chain ecosystem. And that's just such an enormous change in the paradigm that gradually got absorbed and internalized to where now, everyone's like, oh yeah, I've been interop all the way, and so.
Yeah, and I mean, you just mentioned how much IBC could be a game changer in the industry. So, do you have some IBC predictions for 2022?
Yes, sure, absolutely. Okay, so we know there'll be new features like interchain staking and interchain accounts and cross-chain staking and so forth. Those will be a really big deal. Now, one of the things that most people have not experienced is the astonishing smoothness of IBC when it's deployed correctly. Where credit to Osmosis for really doing the IBC to go to market and bringing that out, where you could just in the Kepler wallet, you just say, "Yep, transfer some of my atoms over here," and now deploy them in these smart contracts, right? And that felt easier and safer than spending money on Ethereum. I mean, it was amazing how clean and fast and straightforward that worked for most purposes. And so some of these features are going to roll out very smoothly and very quietly, and again, will be game changers. So a couple of key things is now with all the smart contract platforms, especially Agoric coming out, that'll make a big difference. With our stable token coming out, where it's a community collateral backed stable token, so that now you can have a stable token that is backed by Run, backed by Osmo, whatever it is that the community decides they want to rely on for collateral. all of that now just becomes grease for easy cooperation across multiple chains. And so I think that we'll start to see multi-chain use cases as opposed to merely use cases that are on a chain that you can bring assets to participate in. You'll have use cases that span chains where I'm going to take assets from here over to here, lock them up, take this token over there to use it in some particular way, bring that token back over here and so forth. And, a big part of what Agoric smart contract brings is being able to, from the ground up, it was designed to be able to do these cross-chain use cases, being able to have smart contracts that are about use some assets from there, combine them with assets from that other chain, put them together and get this novel thing that I can send to yet a third party. That's going to be all pretty cool.
Yeah, IBC will be a game changer, especially for Agoric when you guys launch, and the run protocol, which we're going to talk about in a couple of minutes, will leverage a lot of different tokens from a lot of different ecosystems.
Exactly.
So this is so cool. But before we talk about run, let's talk about Agoric's BLT token. So could you talk a little bit about like the tokenomics and what people have to know before it goes live?
So BLD, build, is the staking token for Agoric. So it is, it is staking and governance. Most of it is locked up, right? In terms of, all the investors, all the founders, all the buyers, all the validators, everyone else has at least, a year cliff, plus, another year or possibly 4-year lockup. Except for a small amount that was sold in the public sale. We had a recent public sale of build token via CoinList, which was awesome. That we closed out the year with, which was, you can bet 2021 was a crazy ending of the year for us. But we had a public sale that has some that is locked up for 6 months. There's a bunch of other tokens that the foundation has, that the company has, that are reserved for future community pool and that sort of stuff, that while it's not formally locked, it won't be in circulation anytime soon. So build will be, pretty scarce because it is the foundational building block for the smart contract platform, but it's not the payment token. The run is the separate fee token for paying for gas, for paying for services and so forth, that's intended to be a stable token that is used to, as I said, grease the wheels of commerce. So in terms of, when I think tokenomics, I think, how does it work in our ecosystem? A lot of people think about, what was the price at various times, or what did it sell for, or what's the unlocking? So we've released some of the, a couple of graphs about what the unlocking looks like. And as I said, it's, there's a small cliff in July and then a big cliff in November, which is the anniversary of our mainnet zero launch. We launched last November, we launched the Cosmos layer of our system that instantiates the build token. So now people actually have it. There are multiple validators on production actually running it. People are staking it and that sort of thing. And that mainnet zero was in order to get that foundation laid to be able to then deploy the JavaScript smart contracts on top of it. So the year anniversary of mainnet zero is when a lot of tokens unlock, and then there's monthly unlocking from there. So that's sort of the big, interesting unlock event that happens in the future. So the key things are that build acquires value or gets rewards for staking, where there's some bootstrap rewards of getting more build in sort of the normal staking rewards fashion. But much of the design of the Agoric economy is to produce rewards in the fee token, in run, that will also go to the build holders. And so the build holders will both get rewards in build and run, and they will also be able to get run based on their build, and whether, borrow it against their build, where if they've got run outstanding, against their build, then they can't transfer their build. It's locked up, and it automatically gets paid down by the run rewards that flow to build. So there's various ways that build, even though it's locked up, is immediately valuable when the economy launches, is immediately valuable to the build holders. And the way that run rewards accrue to the build holders is the native, the run implementations, all of the run protocol contracts, like the vaults, like the AMM, Pegasus, what the pegging infrastructure, IBC, whatever, any of those that produce fees that go to the build holders. The build holders are the ones that are operating this network to be of value to people. That's where, a small fraction of the economic activity, a very small fraction, trickles into a reward pool that is distributed to the build holders. And that the goal is to drive the value of the staking token should rise with the size of the economy. Not the value of the tokens, but the value of the network, right? The value of the collective build should rise with the value of economic activity in order to preserve the economic security that proof of stake relies on. And that was sort of a critical requirement that many chains don't have a model of how does the native token actually accrue value other than than simple inflation for people. And the answer is it accrues value based on the growth, based on a small trickle of fees from the economic activity happening on chain.
Awesome. You touched on Run
Yes.
a couple of times, and this is something I'm personally very excited about, because I think Run is probably like the interchain version of MakerDAO,
right.
Which is super cool. And could you talk more or
Sure.
give us like from a broad perspective, an overview of the Run protocol?
Absolutely. So interchain version of MakerDAO, absolutely, or community stable token or what have you. So Run is implemented with several smart contracts on Agoric using exactly the framework and toolkits and so forth that developers on the platform will use. And indeed, it is designed to be able to extend in various ways over time as people deploy interesting contracts. So once we open up being able to run third-party contracts on the platform, people will be able to add enhancements and wrinkles to both leverage the Run ecosystem and the Vault ecosystem and so forth, and clone it for other related purposes. So some of the elements and the specifics of what the parameters for collateralization, the interest rates, exactly which contracts are able to mint, run, and so forth, is really going to be up to the community. The idea is this is not something that Agoric owns and controls and launches. It's something that there is a community out there outside of Agoric to participate in the growth and governance of Run. But there is the vault system, which is like MakerDAO vaults, fairly straightforward, easy to have vaults in multiple different collaterals with governance that controls what are the over collateralization ratios. And we have various techniques for the future to reduce the required over collateralization ratios and so forth, that as we get a rich smart contract ecosystem nearby, it becomes straightforward to add those. But for starters, it's pretty straightforward, very easy for people to understand, with a few interesting key differences, right? One of the key elements of the Agoric platform and the JavaScript smart contract framework is contracts communicate with each other asynchronously. They can wake up as a result of events and so forth. And so in our case, there will be an Oracle network. We're working with several of the groups that are both validators on Agoric and Chainlink nodes to put together an independent Oracle network that will drive the required liquidations for the vault mechanism. And when price signals come in that indicate that the price of collateral has fallen, for example. Now we're deep diving into the mechanics of MakerDAO. The way a vault works is I bring over, let's say, $200 worth of Atom. I take a loan of $100 worth of Run against that, and it's locked up, and the price of Atom floats around, and that's fine. If it dropped too far, which as we all know, we would like to not happen. But if, the market turned and it dropped too far, then of course they can top it up and keep it so that there's enough collateral to cover the Run. Or before it goes underwater, you want to liquidate that, which is to say, sell that asset on the vault to pay off that loan. And now everybody's good. And anything that you sell, anything that's left over, the person with the vault gets back the change, as it were. And now they're square, their debt is paid off and so forth. And that's the model of vaults. You put in more collateral than you need, you borrow a little bit. If the value falls, this will get sold off. Otherwise, you can borrow up and down, you can pay it back, you can borrow it again and so forth. It's sort of like a line of credit up to the value of your collateral. In Ethereum, nothing happens unless something off-chain makes it happen, right? There's no actual activity that happens on-chain that wasn't a transaction from someone outside triggered. On the Agoric platform, it's an asynchronous world. There are smart contracts that can wake up noticing when things happen. And so when a price change comes in, the vault mechanism can wake up and go, oh, the price fell, I need to liquidate. It can proactively liquidate on the local AMM, right? So it can automatically do those liquidations. And that's something that governance can change what the liquidation strategy is over time as people come up with better, faster, richer, more economically sound, whatever, liquidation strategies, more economically favorable liquidation strategies. And those can be rolled out by governance, over time, however the governance of Run wants to work. But initially, it's fairly simple. It goes and takes the liquidated position and sells it on the local AMM. And then arbitrage will make sure that the local AMM, even if there's a little slippage, will get corrected back based on deep pools in Osmosis or Emrys or wherever it is that we are connected with this wonderful IBC that we all put together. Right. And so this is one of those advantages of launching in a connected world is we can immediately launch with very efficient arbitrage to deep pools of liquidity, so that even though we've got simple arbitrage or simple liquidation on our chain, it can be economically sound and economically robust. So there are other pieces, the get run function. So vaults is one of the ways you can mint run. You can bring atoms over, assuming that's one of the collaterals, Osmo, secret, the tokens from Juno, whatever it is, you can bring those tokens over. Once we get Wormhole up and running, you can bring Solana, so you can get off of there and into the Cosmos ecosystem. But anyway, you can bring those assets over, lock them in a vault, borrow run, take that back to Injective and buy an option, take it back over to an Osmosis pool to be, collateral for Osmo or something else, bring it over to some curve style pool to be trading, run versus UST versus DAI versus whatever, everything that we want to be able to do with a stable token, you can do based on the assets from the overall Cosmos ecosystem. The other way is the get run protocol, where anyone who has build, can just essentially borrow some run against their staked build, and they don't risk liquidation of the build. Instead, it's simply the run is automatically paid down by the run rewards that you get from staked build. And so that's another nice alternative. And it means that the people who made this foundation possible, made this platform possible, they immediately get to participate in all of the economic ecosystems that are built that use or leverage or rely on this. And so that's a really nice synergy there. And they get, again, a small trickle of reward for operating this platform.
I mean, it's quite a complex but a very powerful mechanism to handle this, because on the other side, you basically give also projects from outside of the current Cosmos ecosystem the opportunity to get exposure to this type of mechanism, and that's pretty cool. And I mean, it stands for everything IBC is representing at the moment. But I mean, we talked about several exciting topics. We talked about how people can program smart contracts with JavaScript in the future. We talked about the complex mechanism of run, but also about the build token. So I want to ask you the last question about Agoric. What are you expecting for Agoric to happen in 2022? Are you expecting kind of a network effect? So what are you looking forward to?
So this is relevant to that question, but it's a little bit of a follow-up on the last topic. As with many things, IBC, the implementation of TCP, operating systems, whatever it is, what I'm describing in the deep dive is a lot of how it works. But systems that are easier to use, it's often complicated underneath to make a system that's easy to use. And so the goal of a lot of this stuff is to make it quite easy to bring your asset, borrow some run, now spend it, right? And so we have a lot of sophistication here with a lot of smart people, not just in Agoric, but outside. But the goal is to make it easy for people to onboard and be able to use this stuff. And so, 2022, run protocol. So Agoric will launch in stages. The first stage is the run protocol. It's the smart contract platform, including our safety our safety mechanisms and the composability and so forth, and then set of components needed to launch the run protocol and make it available in the overall interchain ecosystem. And that's a $75 billion and growing ecosystem that doesn't have an asset-backed stablecoin yet. And so that's a really big value prop opportunity, and we solve a problem that people want solved, and they want our solution because they know it'll be extensible for their needs in the future. So that's the first launch, and that's crucial. And I expect a major network effect around that, independent of the rest of the programmability of our platform. So then after that, we will have permissioned deployment of smart contracts on the platform, where, there will be some people that we partner with in order to get something that is high enough quality and security reviewed and all that to go out during the permission phase. We can address key extensions of the run protocol, whether it's stuff to reduce over collateralization or enhance or, replace governance elements with automated market elements once they're automated, markets for 10-year bonds or whatever it is. And then finally, the third is the permissionless deployment of smart contracts on the Agoric platform. And that, and that is, I would say Q4 at the earliest. And so I expect a lot of network growth, network value from the run protocol, simply because there's so much need outside of the Agoric platform itself, and it can really interoperate well due to IBC with all these other chains doing all this other cool stuff. And then there are already people that are starting to build stuff on Agoric that would then roll out later on in the year. And once there's a bunch of value in run, then the utility of being able to write small, simple, smart contracts in JavaScript that are near the pool of assets that are driving the run protocol is going to be pretty obvious to people. And I expect some growth there as people come up with, novel ways to collateralize, novel ways to provide, derivatives or yield off that and so forth. Some of that they'll want to just write the smart contract rather than deploying their own zone.
Exciting times to be in Agoric, I would say. But considering this, what is a good way to learn more about Agoric, to engage with the rest of your community, and to dive deeper and get involved?
That's a great question. So most of our technical discussion, public technical discussion, happens on Discord at agoric.com/Discord. And so, go to our website. There's a bunch of links off of there. And for any developer, and especially any JavaScript developer, follow the links to the getting started. The smart contract platform and framework is there. We're, running contracts and working with people on DevNet to be able to let people start building applications that, if they're ready and they're good enough, they could go out, even as soon as, early Q2 as part of the permission phase. And then finally, we are hiring. So with, both dev management, developers, marketing, across the board. So from our website, check out the careers page. We definitely want some more great people, both inside and also, I guess the final thing is we have bounties. We really want to support projects that want to build, and one of the easy ways to start learning the Agoric platform is take a bounty. But if there's a group that already has an idea of what they want to build and they don't need their own zone, they aren't doing their own special staking arrangements, what have you, then by all means come build in JavaScript, and we would be happy to support them with that. Many of our investors are looking at how to put together an ecosystem fund to be able to invest in projects and companies that are building on top of Agoric. So this really is the ground floor, but the elevator is going up very quickly. And so people should jump on board.
Guys, you heard it here first. And as always, you can find all the necessary links in the description below. And with that being said, Dean, thank you so much for being on the show, for being at This Week in Cosmos. I think we got a very good overview of Agoric and a good feeling of what is up to come in 2022. Now I'm even more bullish. So thanks, Dean, and I hope I see you soon.
Thank you guys so much. Thank you, JURI. Thank you, Fabian. Talk to you soon.